Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm really excited for this episode in particular because we're really only going to be talking about the Champions League because we're going into an international window. There was FA Cup games over the weekend too and NWSL, but right now, I think there's just so much to talk about that happened with the Champions League. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about if you've been following anything. So we're gonna spend the whole episode talking about that, and then next week's will probably be about the sort of like national teams, and maybe we'll tie in some FA Cup stuff there too. Or maybe I just won't talk about the FA Cup, and that's okay. And it's not just because Arsenal lost to Brighton. That's okay. Obviously, I don't love it, but that's not why I'm avoiding talking about it. I acknowledge they lost, they're out of the FA Cup. The FA Cup is still important, but Champions League is just like all that I'm thinking about right now. Let's just dive right into it. The first game that we're going to talk about is the Manchester United versus Bayern Munich game, which ended 5-3 on aggregate for Bayern Munich. So they are moving on into the semifinal, which is exciting for them. They traditionally do quite well in the Champions League. I think they've been in like 8 quarterfinals. Now I don't exactly remember what they were saying. I have slept since I listened to those commentators, but they do well. They're often in the sort of knockout phase of the competition, but they have not I don't think they've ever won the Champions League. We'll see if they have it in them this season. They've had a little bit of a mix up following the January window. And then they have some players who have announced that they're departing at the end of the season. So there's like a lot on the line here. It feels like they're in a bit of a like turnover period, and this might be the last time for these players. So there's that about that. But it ended up 5-3 for Bayern. But going into the second leg, which was played at Bayern was up 3-2 on aggregate. So they only had a one goal advantage. And so I had said in the previous episodes that I thought this was the game that there was like the most left to play for. Honestly, I think all of them except the Barcelona game were still like very open for anybody just because of the teams involved. But this one to me felt like Man United could sneak through here. Like I just felt like there was a little something that could happen if Man United showed up and played like the game of their life, which they started out super well. So in the 11th minute, Melvin Mallard scores a goal. And so suddenly it's 3-3 on aggregate. There used to be like an advantage for like away goals. They like counted not double, maybe double. I don't know. There was like some sort of calculation there. That doesn't exist anymore. And so it was just like 3-3 on aggregate. And so suddenly the game is tied realistically because it's the combined score. That's what on aggregate means if people don't know that. I feel like a lot of us just assume that this language everybody knows, but the two legs get combined and that total score is what counts. So it's 3-3. Until the 81st minute, this game is essentially tied. And it's looking like it's going to come down to the wire. Like, are they going to have to go to extra time? Are we going to look at penalties? Like, what is going on? And this was the first game that played on the second day of the ties. And so it was so exciting. But then in the 81st minute, the captain of Bayern, Vigo's daughter, scored from a corner. They had had so many corners. United had been defending for their lives. And I think it was from a corner. Anyways, their captain, center back, scores a goal. Very, very exciting for them. So they're up a goal. And then unfortunately for Man United, I guess, Bayern Munich scored another goal like 3 minutes later in like 84th minute. So then they were up 2 goals with like 10 minutes left to play, including the extra time. So tough for Man United. Obviously, every team wanted to go through to the semifinal, but for this to be their very first experience of playing in the Champions League, they did so well. They really, I think, made their club so proud. If I was a Man United fan, I would be so proud. I would be so excited because this is a difficult competition. And I think we're seeing that in their league play and we're seeing that in their sort of depth and availability of players because they don't have any right now. In this Champions League semifinal, they had, I think, only four like outfield players or something like that. three of which were academy players. Like the injuries, jumping up to this level and playing so many extra games at such high level when the schedule is already so full is so difficult to do. And if your squad isn't built for it and isn't set up for it, then by the time you get to this stage in the tournament, there's sort of like no bodies left. Like people just aren't available. They're injured. They have knocks. They just can't be available. And so it gets really, really difficult. And unfortunately, that's what happened to Man United. I think this happens to debutantes in the tournaments or teams who maybe aren't always getting so deep in the Champions League because it's hard to build a squad that has really big squad depth when you're not consistently getting this far in these tournaments, because if you're not, then the playing time just like isn't the same, right? Like, so all of that to say, I think Man United had a great debut in the Champions League. I'm very excited for them. There seem to be some questions about whether or not Mark Skinner is going to continue to keep his job, which I think is really interesting. I haven't spoken much about him, but he is not loved by the women's soccer community. I'll say that. So I think that's really interesting. I think it'll depend on if they qualify for Champions League next year, which they are in a battle with Chelsea and theoretically with Arsenal because everyone assumes that Arsenal has like 6 points that they're going to pick up, but they just lost to Brighton at the weekend and that's one of the games that they have to play. So we'll just see about how all of that finishes in the WSL to see who the heck is playing Champions League next season. But we're not there yet. We have a lot more to talk about. So I am going to skip the Arsenal game for now. That is the other game that played on Wednesday. I'm going to skip the Arsenal Chelsea game for now. Obviously, I'm wearing my Champions of Europe shirt today. I actually have really mixed opinions about it. I think we'll get into all of that. Overall, I'm happy my team's through to the semifinal, but we'll come back to that because that's the game that really has the most talking points. So next, I will go to the Barcelona versus Real Madrid game. This second leg of the tie was played at Spotify Camp Nou in Barcelona, which is the like humongous stadium there. And it's so historic, but it has been under construction. And this is the first game that the women's team has played at the new Spotify Camp Nou. And I Googled how to pronounce it. It told me to pronounce it like the word no in English. So that's what I'm going with. And if it's wrong, I blame Google. And that's okay. I don't speak Spanish. I've heard like every single person who says it who's not Spanish say something different. So I'm going with Spotify Camp No. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but we're just going with it. This game ended 12-2 on aggregate, which is insane. Barcelona scored 6 goals each game, and then they had a clean sheet the second game. First game was 6-2 at Real Madrid, and then at Spotify Camp Nou, 6-0. Just so many goals. Really disappointing for Real Madrid. I wanted them, not that I think anybody expected them to actually like beat Barcelona, but I wanted it to be more competitive for them. I want the Spanish league overall to be more competitive. And it's just not happening. So that was really disappointing, but there are tons of talking points coming out of that game. So we'll start with the first woman to score at the new Spotify Camp Nou was Alexia Putellas. She was the first woman for Barcelona to score at Camp Nou to begin with. So I think she was also potentially the first person to score at their other stadium, Jonathan Cruyff, Johan Cruyff, I think is actually what it's called. Jonathan obviously is like the English translation. That's so embarrassing. Anyways, Johan Cruyff Stadium. I think she was also the first person to score there. I might have made that up. I just think Alexia has done everything. To be honest, she is unbelievable. But she was the first woman to score at the sort of new Spotify Camp Nou, which was just so incredible. It was also her 30th Champions League goal. She's the first Spanish player to score 30 goals in the Champions League, which is, it seems obvious that she would have that many goals because Alexia is so good, but she's a midfielder and like midfielders aren't scoring as many goals, obviously, as like forwards and stuff. But the fact that she scored 30 Champions League goals, first Spanish player to reach that milestone, it's just so cool. She is breaking every barrier. She sets the standard in so many ways for so many things right now, especially in Champions League football. I think it's just incredible. Speaking of another ridiculous milestone for Alexia Putellas, that was her 500th appearance for Barcelona. 500th! That is so many games. So many games. I like can't really even fathom it. But yeah, she played 500 games. They did a really, really sweet celebration for her afterwards where they had a jersey, a Barcelona jersey, already in a frame with Alexia 500. They gave all of the players the same shirt, the same jersey that said Alexia 500. Like, just unbelievable. She was super emotional after the game. And it's somebody who, unless you really closely follow her, like on social media or the things that come out about her, which quite frankly are hard to access in the United States, you wouldn't know that she's like an emotional person. So seeing her just like walking around with tears in her eyes was really, really sweet. And I'm so happy that they did such a big celebration because that is an unbelievable number of games. Kelly O'Hara and Ali Riley, both legends of the game for their national teams and in different leagues. Kelly in the NWSL, Ali Riley in so many leagues. She's played kind of everywhere. She's played Champions League football, all of that. They were both like I'm not sure if I played 500 games in my whole career, let alone 500 games for one club. Like, that is ridiculous. So, just the sheer magnitude and longevity of Alexia's career so far at Barcelona is unbelievable. And she's like, what, 32? Did she just turn 32? Whatever. She's in her early 30s. I mean, if she's like Kim Little, if she's like Marta, Kim Little's what, like 35? Marta's, I think, 40, 39 or 40. Like, theoretically, she could have so many more games if she wanted to. And there's been a lot of talk about her contract with Barcelona and all of that. So it's just an interesting thing to see, like, did she reach this 500 and that's going to be her milestone? Are we going to see her play 600 for Barcelona? Like, if she signed a 2-year extension or even a 3-year deal with them, like theoretically she could make it to 600 games, which is just unreal to think about. So, anyways, that's the Alexia Putellas of all of that. She really stole the show mostly. There's another milestone that happened. Ewa Pajor scored her 40th Champions League goal, which is just so many goals. All she does is score goals, I swear. She's just like constantly scoring goals every time Barcelona or Poland is scoring. I'm like, well, was it Ewa Pajor? Because probably. Like, she's just that prolific. She's so good. Barcelona has so many goal scorers, so it is often her, but they have so many other ones too that like maybe it's her, maybe it's not. Who knows? But yeah, so that's what happened there. Really disappointing for Real Madrid. Poor performances defensively and offensively, I would say. Yeah, just like not what I was hoping for from them. Nobody was expecting them to win, but I wanted them to at least be like pretty competitive games, and they just like weren't, honestly. There's that. The third game, which was the final game to play on Thursday, was Lyon versus Wolfsburg, which ended what, like 4-1? Now I need to look because I forget, but it was crazy. It ended, oh my gosh, 4-0. So on aggregate, it was 4-1 because Wolfsburg came into the tie up 1-0. They had ended the first game at home 1-0. So they're going into it a goal up. I think there was a lot of discussion about how Wolfsburg was going to play. Like, were they just going to try to defend the lead? Were they going to go for it and try to just win the game? Like, what was their plan going to be? And I feel like they kind of did neither. And so it was really interesting. But in the 16th minute, American international Lily Johannes, 18-year-old, scores for Lyon. It takes a pretty big deflection. It was still considered her goal because it was on frame, but it just was going one way and then hit the player's leg and went the complete other way, which for me sometimes those feel really tragic for the goalkeeper because I know goalkeepers, I don't know, but my understanding and what I've observed is that goalkeepers are really, really hard on themselves. There was nothing that this goalkeeper could have done. And a lot of people are like, oh, like, it's not as exciting. Wolfsburg's goal in the first leg also took a big deflection. So it was kind of like a mirror, like it happens. But then they play the whole game. And at the end of the 90 minutes, it's tied 1-1 on aggregate. So we go into extra time, which is so fun and exciting, especially in a game like this where they're both like throwing everything at it. They've both made substitutions in ways that are like really interesting, that then you have to play like another 30 minutes with like the same like lineup out there that maybe isn't exactly what you would have wanted. I don't remember exactly what they did, but I always think that kind of thing is so interesting because you make tactical decisions towards the end of the 90 minutes to do specific things, hoping that you don't go to extra time. But then when you do, it's like, I think you get like one extra sub, but it's just always an interesting thing. Anyways, so in extra time in the first half, because it's two 15-minute periods, in the first half, Melchi Domarnay scores in the 102nd minute, putting Lyon up 2-1 on aggregate. So very exciting. But at this point, Wolfsburg is like not out of it. Like one goal, that's nothing. Well, then what was it, like 6 minutes later or something, 5 or 6 minutes later, in the like added time of the first half of extra time, Lyon scores another goal. So then they're up 3-1 on aggregate. And it's like, oh boy. So this is getting a little less in control. And everybody's just saying, like, Wolfsburg just needs a goal. Wolfsburg needs a goal, and they're back in this. And then it's a one goal, right? Like it, and it felt tight. It was leaning as the game got longer and longer. It was looking like, okay, how long can Wolfsburg pull them off? It's Lyon. At the end of the day, they have so much Champions League experience. They are the giants of Champions League. They've won it 8 times. They know what they're doing. So then in the 119th minute, so near the very end of the 120 minutes, Chewinga scores another goal for Lyon, really just seals the deal. And Lyon moves through 4-1 on aggregate over Wolfsburg. So very exciting. Those games were fun, but I think everybody's just talking about the Arsenal Chelsea game. At least everybody that I'm seeing, we're still talking about the Arsenal Chelsea game, and I think there's a lot there to talk about. And so I will just sort of lay it all out there. So if you watched either last episode or the first leg of the Chelsea Arsenal game, it was played, Arsenal was home, it was played at Emirates Stadium, and Arsenal ended the game up 3-1. So it was a 2-goal lead to Arsenal, potentially controversially. And I think in a lot of ways, I already talked about this ad nauseum. Chelsea had 2 goals called back, one of which I think was soft, but not wrong. Like if you're gonna call the foul, then it's a foul, and it couldn't be overturned by VAR because it was a foul. I think it's one that we wouldn't necessarily want called as a penalty, sort of broadly, or I'm sorry, as like taking back a goal broadly, in the same way that like if a defender was doing that and you called a penalty, like that would be really soft. Like I do think that's true. The second one though, I think is really interesting and could have had broader implications. And so that was when Kadisha Buchanan kicked the Arsenal goalie in the stomach, like full studs, not like finished through, like foot like this. I would argue, as did the rules analyst, that should have been at least a yellow card, if not a red card. Now, if Kadisha Buchanan gets a red card in that game, she's unavailable for the next game. And Chelsea goes down up to only 10 players in this first game. That changes so much going into the second game if you know that Kadisha Buchanan is not available, because right now she looks like their best healthy center back, or at least that seems to be how Sonia Bompastor is seeing it. Because if you look at the starting 11 that she put out against Arsenal for the second game, she did in fact start Kadisha Buchanan as a center back, and then she had Lucy Bronze as the other center back. If you know anything about Lucy Bronze, it's that she does not traditionally play center back. Lucy Bronze is a right back. They have not been playing Naomi Girma, who is, I would argue, one of the best center backs in the world. I do think that they are struggling. Both she and Chelsea are struggling to figure out how she fits in their system. She has only ever played in America. She is very used to an American style. She played in college in the US at the San Diego Wave with the US women's national team. This is her first time out of the United States. It's a very different kind of game, or can be, depending on who your coach is. And I would argue also right now that Chelsea is in a transition period in which last season, Sonia Bompastor really didn't change that much. She inherited this winning team from Emma Hayes and mostly just went with it. But this year, I think one of the things that's happening with Chelsea is that Sonia's saying, this is my team. I make these decisions. I choose who plays. I choose my players. I choose my style. And there's this transition happening, which is challenging. And for them to still be doing as well as they've been doing is impressive based on that sort of assumption that I'm making. So that's me saying something nice about Chelsea. I think you should all appreciate that. And I'm sure you're all thinking, Bridget, you haven't even started talking about the second game because what in the heck happened there? So, in this game, it was nuts. I'll say that. It was incredible soccer for the first 85 minutes, is what I'll say. And I'm not just saying that because Chelsea scored towards the end of the game. I think both tactically and execution wise, both of these teams showed up and were so sharp. And that's what you want at the end of the day is two teams to show up and like battle it out. And I was going to say battle to the death. Obviously, that's like sarcasm. Except that if you look at the way that these players were reacting at the end of this game or in the final minutes of this game, it's not that dramatic because they gave every single thing that they had. And I am so impressed with that. And we aren't talking about that enough because of all of these things that we're about to talk about. But I would just first like to acknowledge the level of football and soccer and tactical, technical mentality brilliance that existed was top tier. And again, that's what we want in the Champions League. That's what the Champions League's about. That's what these top WSL teams should be doing. And so I want to start there. Yeah, there had been 0 goals scored in the first 85 minutes, but that's because they were defending so well, both of them, that they were shutting down the other's attacks. Like it was so fun to watch with both of these teams really not having their like desired starting 11s available. I think that's fair to say for both. But in the, I don't know, after like the 85th minute, all hell breaks loose, is what I would say. And we have to talk about the refereeing. That's the only thing that anybody's talking about. And it's important that we're talking about it. Please don't think that I think we shouldn't be talking about it because I do think that we should. I think the officiating was poor the whole game from the start. The official, the referee, I thought she was trying to assert, I'm going to have this game under control from the very beginning, when in the 90th second, literally in the first minute and a half, she gave Daphne Van Domselaar a yellow card, the Arsenal goalie, a yellow card for time wasting. I was like, oh, so she means business. She's going to have this on lock. We are not letting this game get out of control. She's aware of everything that's on the line with Champions League, but like these are rivals. There is so much more on the line here than any other game. It sort of felt like that was the vibe of it. So obviously these players are going to be doing crazy things. But she just like wasn't calling fouls, I think, throughout the game, which then led her to absolutely losing control of the game. She absolutely lost control of the game in about the 80th minute, which is when Chelsea, as they needed to do, started throwing everything they had at Arsenal. That's what you do. You're down 2 goals still. There's 10 minutes left to play. Like plus stoppage time. But you gotta go. You have to throw everything. And Chelsea did that. And I will say, as an Arsenal fan, I was stressed from the first minute because last year Chelsea played Man City in the quarterfinals, lost 2-0 against Man City the first leg, and then beat them 3-0 the second leg and just continued right on into the semis. I did not want that to happen this time. And so, yes, they had a 2-goal cushion. But that is you cannot take any cushion because Chelsea can on their day score goals out of nowhere. In the 90 plus 4, Nusken, who It's a player that I really like. She's German. She's a midfielder. It was weird. She like didn't play at all like the first half of the season and suddenly has become very important at work. And she took that seriously and she scored a beautiful header off of, I don't think it was a corner, but off of a cross from the left side. It was gorgeous, just unreal. Like so fast, so quick. Maybe Arsenal could have defended it better. I don't know. I haven't watched it back, but just like so fast. And everybody's like, oh boy. And I'm sitting on my couch like, oh boy. Oh boy. Because there was like 8 minutes of stoppage time. Okay, fine. Here we go. So there's still like 4 minutes left, and Chelsea is throwing everything, and Arsenal is defending with their lives. Arsenal went to a five back. They subbed in Leia Codina to have like three center backs, which sometimes they've been subbing in Leia Codina at like the six. I think that's more what they did, but she was dropping so deep. Anyways, I actually don't think it worked. I think when you're defending for your life, disrupting the defensive line in any way is like a crazy choice. But I trust Renee Slagers. Like she knows what she's doing. So, and I obviously don't. Anyways, so in the 90 plus six in like 30 seconds, a ball is like kicked ahead. I don't actually remember exactly how it led up to this, but it's on the right side, which is where Alyssa Thompson was. Katie McCabe is defending on the left-hand side. And Katie McCabe has two hands on Alyssa Thompson at the start. Alyssa Thompson is very fast, faster than Katie McCabe, who is quite fast, and she's already in front of Katie. So, like, this is dangerous. Katie closes her hand and has since said, reached for her shirt. Her other hand, her like left hand on her waist, sort of reached for the shirt too, but slipped off. So she reaches for the hand, gets a little bit of the shirt, but mostly misses the shirt and realizes that she's in Alyssa Thompson's hair. And if you watch the whole video and you don't just take this individual screenshot, she immediately releases when she feels Alyssa Thompson's hair. And I think some of you are nervous that what I'm going to say is that Katie McCabe was fine. I don't think that's true at all. I think that needs to be a red card every single time. Every single time someone's hair is even, okay, maybe not even remotely pulled, but like that was more than even remotely pulled, right? Like her hand, she may have been reaching for the jersey and she might have had that intention. I do believe that she would have that intention. Katie McCabe, though, she sometimes is a little crazy. Maybe that's not even fair. She's very physical. She gets a lot of yellow cards. She's only had 2 red cards in her whole career. She is not a player who traditionally does those kinds of things. Usually she gets, I think both of her red cards have actually been for like yelling at the ref. They're not usually for this kind of thing. So she has a reputation, and some of it is warranted, some of it is not, in my opinion. And she's been open about this. Refs come up to her before games even start, and they're like, "Are you going to behave today?" Like that's really, really inappropriate, in my opinion. Is she a physical player? Yes. Does she always deserve all of the cards that she gets? I think is an open question. I think she earned a sort of reputation, and then it has been like a perpetuating thing. Anyways, I digress. The ref didn't see it, so didn't call anything, or like didn't have a good angle on it, didn't call anything. Fine. I'm actually not mad at that ref about that. The person who I think needs to be really, really deeply investigated and given a lot more training is the VAR official who's sitting in the upstairs room with all the computers and all the camera angles. Because there were clear enough camera angles that her hand was in Alyssa Thompson's hair, and that needs to be a red card every single time. I think that's it. That's all I have to say about that. It needs to be a red card every single time. And it wasn't. I think there was another instance in the game that and in all of this, we have to be careful the way that we talk about it because of what has happened since, and we'll get to that in a minute. There was a time earlier in the game where I'm not exactly sure what happened. It was Katie McCabe and Lauren James were near each other. Katie McCabe ends up on the ground. Lauren James takes multiple steps, and again, this is all on video. Lauren James appears to look down, at least, and then steps indirectly, but like scrapes her foot down the side of Katie McCabe. And you can tell makes no effort to sort of step like around her. She just like continues how she's stepping, n not making any effort not to step directly on Katie McCabe. I will remind you, Lauren James, if we're going to talk about reputations here, Lauren James got a red card for doing exactly this at the 2023 World Cup. Again, nothing was done here. Nothing was called. And that was in the first half. If Lauren James gets a red card for that in the first half, that changes everything, in my opinion. There's also a moment where Taylor Hines is trying to waste time with the ball in the corner flag. She and Lucy Bronze are going at it. They're both like kicking at each other's ankles. And she catches Lucy Bronze's ankle while she's like on the ground, and she just like sticks her legs out, catches Lucy Bronze's ankle. Taylor Hines was already on a yellow. And the ref called a foul, but did not give a card for it. A lot of people think Taylor Hines deserved a red card for that. So there are multiple instances here. We've now talked about 4 over the 2 legs, of which red cards may or may not have been appropriate. Okay? The officiating was poor. I'll say it. When we have VAR, we have to utilize it properly. I think, no question, Katie McCabe's needed to be sent down and automatically being like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that. That's a red card. I think the Lauren James should have been reviewed and sent down to see what the referee thinks about that. Because I think, again, it was one of those things where the referee didn't have a good like line of sight on it. And when that happens, that's what VAR is for. And I just find it so interesting that it seems like in the Champions League and potentially in like Europe more broadly, they're being very like conservative in their use of VAR and therefore not utilizing it the way that they're supposed to, making it ineffective, which is different than what happened in the NWSL. The NWSL, oh my gosh, they were sending everything down for review. And so we're having like 15 minutes added on to each half. I don't want that either. I would actually just like it to be used properly. I don't know. That feels like a crazy thing to say. So, not, I don't know if a single thing at all in either leg was actually sent down for the referee to look at. They were just decided by the VAR teams, which I would argue is not the right way to use it in my understanding of how I've seen it used really successfully at like world tournaments. And now I think quite successfully in the NWSL. So that's my note on the VAR of it all. I had said you have to be delicate and careful in the way that we speak about these things because people are vile on the internet. Vile on the internet. And all of it is based in some sort of ism, whether it's racism, sexism, or homophobia. And it's horrific and gross, and people need to stop. There's absolutely no reason for it. And it's interesting because I've seen a decent amount of people coming to the defense of Lauren James. The sort of discourse online that I saw was like, everyone's mad at Katie McCabe, which you can be disappointed that she did it, but the real anger needs to be at the VAR official for not doing it. Katie apologized immediately to Alyssa, talked to her again when they were shaking hands, and then I believe I saw her speaking to her again after. Whether or not it was intentional is not the question. I do think it was still a red card, even if she apologized for it. Like, that's fine. She then made the post on her Snapchat, and a lot of people were saying, like, or post not on her Snapchat, on her Instagram story, that she was like, I did not intentionally grab her hair. Again, like, the intentionality doesn't affect whether or not it's a red card. Also, Katie McCabe cannot control whether or not she gets a red card. Like, what's she going to do? Look at the referee and be like, yeah, actually, please give me a red card? Like, no, she's not going to do that. The other part that I forgot in all of this was that Sonia Bompastor ended up getting a red card from 2 yellows from yelling at the officials. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the sort of like discourse online was like, Katie McCabe's wrong. Arsenal fans said, okay, but Lauren James also should have gotten a red card. Also, the Katie McCabe of it all happened when there was 90 seconds left in the game. Even if she does get a red card, like, that probably doesn't change that much. Lauren James did this in the first half. That changes everything. Kadisha Buchanan should have gotten a red card. Both of those were significantly earlier and would have caused this. Taylor Hines, if she got the second yellow and a red card, that would have been also in the like high 80s numbers of minutes of the game, right? Like these, the magnitude is not the same here, is what a lot of people are saying. And then people got vile, absolutely disgusting, using Irish slurs against Katie McCabe, who is famously very Irish. Irish people throughout history have been treated really poorly by a lot of people. So many racial slurs, so many homophobic comments, people wishing her to have broken legs and her career to be over. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then people started commenting about Lauren James. Well, Lauren James should have got it. And then all of this nasty, disgusting racism towards Lauren James, which she has experienced a ton of throughout her career, which is absolutely unacceptable. And all I can say is, what are we doing? And I've seen a couple of influential creators in the football space talk about this, many of whom are, I've seen more people defending Lauren James. And I think she does have a history of getting horrific abuse. And so I understand his sensitivity there and the racism there. I think people are less aware how rooted in racism so many of the comments about Katie McCabe are, because Irish people are white, I guess, or don't present in visually in the same way as people of color. And so I think people are not necessarily associating it as quickly and easily with racism, but it is still racism, and it is homophobia, and it's horrific, and there's no place for it, and we have to stop. And so I don't know. The whole thing, there's so much about it that is like so frustrating and disgusting. And the online commentary about it was horrific. And then there are some things about it that were really funny. Like, sorry, really funny. One of which was Sonia Bompastor, which I actually do want to get into this a little bit. This one's going to be a long episode, folks. I have a lot to say. Sonia is an interesting one to me because she is super vocal to criticize the refereeing decisions when they don't go her way. But when she's asked about refereeing decisions that are bad that go her way, she never says, "Yeah, we were on the lucky end of it today, but we need better refereeing." She says things like when they played Arsenal in the league the first time and Arsenal had 2 goals called back that shouldn't have been. There was no VAR. She said, "Oh, I'm not going to comment on that." And just like refused to engage with that at all. And then after both Champions Leagues games is just tearing into the refs. Again, the refereeing was bad. But there are ways that even when it benefits you, which the internet seems to think always benefits Chelsea, which I don't think is necessarily fair either. Maybe that has been true historically. I don't know. But Renee Slagers has been able to say things like, we need better refereeing when there have been calls that have been bad that have gone Arsenal's way. Because you can't control if it's going to go your way or not, so you don't know. Other coaches have been able to do this and to be so outspoken about bad refereeing when you don't like it because of your team, but not recognizing bad refereeing and refusing to engage with it at all when it goes your way, I think is like not it. That can't be the right way to do it. So I will say that I don't like the way that she handled it necessarily. There was a lot of emotion there. Champions League is the one trophy that Chelsea does not have, has never won. They will not win this year because they are out of the competition. But I just think, I don't know. So she ends up getting all of this. She ends up getting 2 yellow card in like 82nd minute or something. And then the like, I don't, shithousery of Taylor Hines was so funny. There are so many videos online of like a foul was called, but Taylor, or maybe it went out of bounds or something, and Taylor's like still kind of like the ball's like rolling in front of Taylor. She's like maybe dribbling, and then Sonia like first of all comes across the midfield line into the Arsenal dugout, onto the pitch, and like leans down to try to take the ball off Taylor Hines and like almost falls over. Sonia, what are you doing? And that's part of what initiated her getting the second yellow and the red card. But like, what are you doing? Why are you doing all that? She ends up with this red card, and then she shows up in her post-match interview. This to me is the part that's really funny. And she was so serious, and that's what's funny about it. With her phone in a video from Twitter. She like pulls up her phone with a video from Twitter, and she's like, she pulled her hair. Like it literally you can see under it like has still the like tweet that you can see. Like Sonia, you could have gotten that video like from your team, but she literally just has her phone and she's like, she pulled her hair. That's a red card. And then I got a red card. And it's like, yeah, because you were acting crazy too. And that's what I mean when I say that this ref just like lost all control of the game. The last 15 minutes were crazy. I think we're genuinely lucky that players are still healthy. I'm not aware of any like injuries that happened in those 15 minutes, but I do think it's lucky because the referee completely lost control of the game. There's so many things that I could say about all of this, but I think the big takeaways are if we're going to have VAR, they need to be trained on how to use it. Hair pulling should always be a red card. You can be a little mad at Katie McCabe, but who you should really be mad at is the VAR referee. And abuse online is never acceptable, ever. Like, what are you doing? Multiple players, Lauren James, Katie McCabe, and Taylor Hines, all had to turn their comments off on any Instagram post that they made for the next like multiple days. Multiple news sources, like women's soccer news sources, had to turn their comments off because there was so much vile stuff in it about each of these players. What are you doing? You're a disgusting human being if that's how you spend your time. And that's just the reality of it. There's no room for it. It has to go. And I'm clearly still very mad about it. But yeah, in the end, Chelsea scored one goal, won the game 1-0. Arsenal goes through on aggregate 3-2. And we're on to the semifinals. And I think as I like started this, I think it's a real bummer that there's so much talk about with the refereeing and red cards and potential red cards that the football has gotten lost because I do think that is like a game that should have like gone down in like Arsenal Chelsea rivalry history because it was such a good entertaining game to watch. It was nerve-wracking. It did not feel safe for anyone. And it's just such a bummer that these are the things that we're talking about it. But anyways, on to the semifinals. Barcelona plays Bayern Munich. Arsenal plays Lyon. I'm excited. Those are both going to be great. I'm excited to see if Bayern can have a turnaround from their 7-1 loss to Barcelona in the league phase. I'm excited to see if Arsenal can have a turnaround from their 2-1 loss to Lyon in the league phase. And I love the Champions League. There just is so much on the line all the time. And Arsenal are defending champions. And let's see what they can do. Anyways, I think that's all we have time for this week. I'm not going to have time to talk about the FA Cup. I guess I can just say Man City is playing Chelsea in the semifinal at Chelsea. And then the other semifinal would be Brighton versus, I think, Liverpool. Liverpool beat Charlton Athletic in the like they scored a goal. It was 0-0 and they scored a goal in like the very end in like stoppage time. So fun that it's going to be either Brighton or Liverpool in the FA Cup final and then City or Chelsea. It's the magic of the cup. There's all that. I don't think I have time for anything else. This has gone on too long, but let me know your thoughts nicely. Because I swear if people start coming in here and being gross and vile or racist or sexist or homophobic or any of the things, we're going to have a problem. Anyways, I hope you have a great week. I hope you're getting excited about national team games. Spain is playing England. It's a World Cup and Euros final rematch. That'll be super fun. US women's national team is playing Japan 3 times. That'll be fun. And there are so many other games, but those are the two that, yes, four that I have my eye on. So I am so excited. Hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you here next time.